What if the scale in your bathroom is, actively lying to you? What if the standard approach to losing weight is actually blinding you to the most dangerous toxic fat hiding right deep inside your body? Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. I'm Mike.
And I'm Susan.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today.
So today we have a very specific, highly actionable mission for you. We are taking a really comprehensive look through recent medical literature and clinical trials to understand a hidden enemy inside the body, visceral fat.
Yeah, and setting that distinction early is just so critical.
Right.
Because when we casually talk about, burning fat, we usually picture subcutaneous fat, the soft, pinchable layer right under the skin that kind of hides our muscle definition.
Yeah, the stuff you can actually see in the mirror. Exactly. But visceral fat is a completely different biological entity. It lives behind your abdominal wall, and it packs itself really tightly around your vital internal organs. I mean, your stomach, your liver, your intestines.
And I think a lot of people visualize fat as just like an inert storage tank for extra calories.
Right.
But reading through the clinical data, it just changes that perspective entirely. Visceral fat acts more like a toxic bubble wrap.
Oh, toxic bubble wrap is such a perfect analogy because it doesn't just sit there suffocating the organs. It's a highly active endocrine organ all by itself. It literally pumps out these inflammatory chemicals called cytokines directly into your bloodstream.
Wait, so it's actively manufacturing inflammation inside you?
Yes, exactly. And those cytokines are the crucial mechanism here. Because of where visceral fat is located, its blood supply drains straight into the portal vein.
And that goes where?
That leads directly to your liver. So this fat is constantly dumping free fatty acids and inflammatory signals right into your body's main metabolic processing plant. Yeah, and that localized toxicity is why visceral fat is the primary driver behind insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, and even systemic cardiovascular issues.
It sounds incredibly bleak when you describe it as a toxic factory attached to your liver. I mean, that's terrifying.
It is, but the paradox in the medical literature is what makes this so fascinating. Because visceral fat is so highly metabolically active, because it has such massive blood flow compared to the fat under your skin, it is actually the fastest and easiest fat for your body to burn off.
Wait, really? The most dangerous fat is the easiest to lose?
Yes. Provided you give it the right biological signals, of course.
Yeah.
That is the silver lining that always kind of gets lost in traditional weight loss advice. You don't have to wait years to see changes.
That is hugely encouraging for anyone listening.
It really is. And the absolute first line of defense against this internal inflammation, it doesn't actually start on a treadmill. It starts at a cellular level, heavily influenced by the specific compounds you put on your dinner plate. We really need to talk about carotenoids.
Okay, carotenoids. These are the natural plant pigments, right?
Exactly.
The compounds that make a carrot bright orange or a tomato deep red or give spinach that rich dark green color. But I think for a long time, the general public just viewed them as, basic vitamins or natural food coloring.
Yeah, but the science reveals their function goes so much deeper than baseline nutrition. To really understand the impact of a carotenoid, we have to look at the root cause of visceral fat accumulation, which is cellular stress.
Right. The engine running too hot.
Exactly. When we consume excess energy, our mitochondria, the power plants of our cells, they get overworked. They start producing metabolic exhaust, which we know as free radicals.
And if those free radicals aren't neutralized, they cause oxidative stress. It's literally like an engine running too hot and melting its own components.
That's exactly what happens. The cell becomes damaged, it gets inflamed, and instead of burning energy efficiently, it basically panics. It panics and starts storing that energy as visceral fat.
So it's this vicious cycle of stress and fat storage.
Right. And carotenoids step in as powerful, targeted antioxidants. They chemically neutralize those free radicals, essentially cooling the engine down. But, and this is the incredible part, they don't stop at damage control.
What else do they do?
The literature shows they engage in epigenetic signaling. Carotenoids literally physically interact with the cellular receptors that control your DNA expression. They can upregulate or turn on the specific genes responsible for fat oxidation.
While turning off the fat-storing genes at the same time.
Yes, while simultaneously downregulating the genes that promote fat storage.
So just to be clear, you eat a bowl of bright orange sweet potatoes or dark leafy greens, and the pigments are acting as, like, molecular switchboard operators inside your abdominal cavity. They're literally rewriting the instructions your fat cells are receiving.
It sounds like science fiction, but yes. There is a really elegant randomized double-blind trial out of Japan that demonstrated this beautifully. The researchers took a group of adults and simply had them consume a diet rich in carotenoid vegetables every single day.
No crazy starvation diet.
Nope. They didn't put them through an extreme starvation protocol at all. They just focused on hitting high levels of these specific plant compounds.
And the timeline on this study is what really shocked me when we were reviewing it. It was only an 8-week trial.
Just 2 months. And the researchers used advanced imaging to look directly at the internal fat. They found that participants consuming the high carotenoid vegetables, specifically a group eating high amounts of lycopene from things like carrots and shiitake cabbage, they experienced a highly significant reduction in their visceral fat volume.
That is wild. The cellular switchboard was flipped, and the body just responded by breaking down the toxic wrap around the organs.
Exactly.
So the actionable takeaway for anyone listening is incredibly straightforward. You don't need some complex, expensive supplement stack. You just need color.
Yes, color is everything. Bell peppers, squash, tomatoes, kale. The more intensely colored the plant, the more carotenoids you are flooding into your system to cool down that mitochondrial stress.
Now, eating those colorful foods sets the genetic foundation, obviously. But the literature also highlights a liquid catalyst that takes this to a whole other level. We're talking about a drink that actively blocks fat from being absorbed into your body in the first place.
Yeah, this is where it gets really mechanical. To grasp how this works, we have to look at the digestive tract and introduce a class of flavonoid polyphenols called catechins.
Catechins, okay.
Like carotenoids, catechins are potent antioxidants, but they perform a very specific physical interference when it comes to the way your body processes a meal.
And the undisputed king of these catechins is green tea, right?
Oh, absolutely.
People have thrown around the phrase, green tea boosts your metabolism for decades, usually as a marketing gimmick on a supplement bottle. But the actual biological mechanism is far more interesting than just a slight metabolic boost. It has to do with how fat physically enters the bloodstream.
Right. Think about the physical structure of dietary fat. When you eat a fat molecule, it's typically in the form of a triglyceride, which is much too large to simply pass through your intestinal wall and into your blood.
The body has to break it down first.
Exactly. It does this by deploying a digestive enzyme called lipase.
And lipase acts like a pair of molecular scissors.
That's a great visual.
It finds the large triglyceride, snips it into smaller free fatty acids, and only then can those smaller pieces actually cross the intestinal barrier to be used for energy or, unfortunately, stored around your organs.
Right. So when you consume a high amount of catechins, they physically bind to those lipase enzymes and inhibit them. They essentially glue the molecular scissors shut.
Wow.
Because the lipase can't do its job, a portion of the fat you just ate remains as a large, unbroken triglyceride. It literally cannot cross the intestinal wall, so it just passes through your digestive tract and is excreted.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there and challenge this for a second, because if catechins block the fat-digesting scissors, does that mean I can just drink a massive ceremonial bowl of matcha and then eat a bacon double cheeseburger completely guilt-free?
Yeah.
Like, does the green tea just cancel out the burger?
I mean, it's a tempting thought, but human biology rarely offers a free pass like that. Catechins inhibit a portion of the lipase, not all of it.
Ah, okay, so it's not a magic shield.
No, you are blocking a percentage of fat absorption, which definitely helps widen your daily energy deficit, but you're still governed by the laws of thermodynamics. If you overwhelm the system with a massive surplus of calories, your body will absolutely still find a way to store the excess.
Right, so the green tea is a multiplier for a healthy lifestyle, not an eraser for a destructive one.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. It accelerates the process, provided you're already pointing the car in the right direction. And there is a synergistic effect happening here, too, because green tea isn't just catechins, it also contains caffeine.
And the combination is where the magic really happens, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. The catechins block the fat absorption in the gut, while the caffeine stimulates the central nervous system. Caffeine triggers the release of noradrenaline, which signals your existing fat cells to release stored energy.
But normally the body shuts that down pretty fast, right?
Exactly. Under normal circumstances, your body has an enzyme that quickly breaks down noradrenaline to stop that fat-burning signal so you don't deplete your reserves. But catechins actually inhibit that breakdown enzyme as well.
Oh, I see. So the caffeine hits the gas pedal on fat burning, and the catechins remove the brakes.
You've got it. The signal to burn fat stays active in the body for much longer.
And the clinical trials validate this two-pronged attack. There was a 12-week, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, also conducted in Japan, that isolated this exact mechanism.
Yeah, that's a landmark study.
They gave participants a catechin-enriched green tea beverage, delivering about 600 milligrams of catechins daily. And over those 3 months, without mandating any extreme dietary overhauls, the catechin group showed a highly significant, measurable decrease in visceral fat area compared to the placebo group.
And if you're looking to actually apply this to your life, it's crucial to understand that not all green tea is created equal.
Right. You can't just buy a sugary bottled iced tea from the gas station.
No, absolutely not. That is not going to have 600 milligrams of active catechins. You want minimally processed, shade-grown teas. Matcha and sencha are definitely your best options because they retain the highest concentration of those vital polyphenols.
Okay, so at this stage in the conversation, we have the nutritional foundation built. Carotenoids are stabilizing the cellular stress, and catechins are limiting new fat absorption while extending the fat-burning signal. But neither of those completely solves the problem on their own. They manipulate the environment, but to physically break down the existing toxic fat wrapped around your liver, the body requires a physiological demand for immediate energy.
And this brings us to what I think is the most critical distinction in all of the medical data. There is a massive meta-analysis reviewing 117 different clinical trials that compared how the human body responds to dieting versus how it responds to exercise.
And the split in the data completely upends how we traditionally think about weight loss. It's wild.
The findings were incredibly definitive. If you only look at total body weight, literally just the number on the scale, caloric restriction and dieting will drive that number down faster.
Like eating less makes you lighter.
Yes. But when researchers looked inside the body using MRI and CT scans, exercise had vastly superior, highly targeted effects specifically on reducing visceral fat, even when the total body weight barely changed.
We really need to explain the biology behind that because to a lot of people, that sounds completely counterintuitive. Why does starving yourself shrink the whole body? But going for a run acts like a sniper rifle aimed specifically at the belly fat.
It comes down to receptor density and the survival mechanisms we evolved over millions of years. Your fat cells have different types of receptors on their surface. Alpha receptors generally inhibit fat burning. They tell the cell to hold on to its energy.
Okay, alpha means hold on.
Right. But beta receptors do the exact opposite. They are highly responsive to adrenaline and noradrenaline, and they command the cell to release its fat stores instantly.
Let me guess. Visceral fat is packed with those beta receptors.
It is entirely saturated with them. Visceral fat evolved as an emergency fuel tank for humans. Because it sits right next to the liver and has massive blood flow, it's designed to dump energy into your system the very second you need to fight or flee.
So when you exercise, your body gets flooded with adrenaline.
Exactly. That adrenaline hits the beta receptors on the visceral fat, and the fat basically melts into the bloodstream to fuel your muscles.
But when you simply cut calories and, sit on the couch, there is no adrenaline spike. There's no biological demand for immediate fuel.
None at all. The body just registers a famine, so it slows down the overall metabolism and desperately holds onto that emergency visceral fuel tank just in case things get even worse.
That is such a brutal evolutionary trap.
It really is. But we see how powerfully we can manipulate this in the clinical trials. Look at the landmark study on stationary cycling. The protocol was incredibly accessible. The researchers had participants cycle for 45 minutes just twice a week.
And the intensity was strictly controlled, right? They kept the participants at 75% of their VO2 peak.
Right.
For someone who isn't a professional athlete, that is roughly 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. It's a moderate to vigorous effort, but it's not a grueling, lung-busting sprint where you want to pass out.
No, it's a highly sustainable pace. But the physiological response to just 90 minutes of that effort per week over the course of 2 months was staggering. The imaging showed these participants reduced their visceral fat by an average of 48%.
That is, they wiped out nearly half of the toxic bubble wrap, suffocating their organs in 8 weeks just by riding a bike twice a week.
And the systemic health improvements followed immediately. Their insulin sensitivity improved by 41%. They were effectively reversing the metabolic conditions that lead to type 2 diabetes.
And this is the part of the data that I think is going to save people listening so much frustration and heartbreak. In that specific cycling study, where they eliminated almost half of their visceral fat and completely transformed their internal health, their total body weight stayed virtually the same.
The scale did not move. It's crazy. If those participants were only judging their progress by stepping on a bathroom scale every morning, they would have concluded the exercise was a complete failure.
They would have just quit.
Absolutely. They would have given up.
It highlights such a massive psychological blind spot. I mean, relying on your bathroom scale to measure your metabolic health is like trying to judge a laptop's processing speed by placing it on a kitchen scale.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You could swap out the hard drive, double the RAM, install a state-of-the-art processor, and drastically improve how the machine functions. But the physical weight of the laptop remains identical. The scale is completely blind to the internal upgrades happening to your biological engine.
That analogy perfectly captures the flaw in our metrics.
Yeah.
A scale cannot differentiate between bone density, muscle glycogen, water retention, and the highly toxic organ fat you are actively burning away.
Right.
When you engage in consistent cardiovascular exercise, your blood volume increases, your muscles store more water and fuel, and your bones can actually become denser. All of those healthy adaptations add physical weight, completely masking the incredible fact that your visceral fat is literally disappearing.
So the absolute best thing you can do for your metabolic health is just throw the scale in the trash.
Honestly, yes.
But if we know that cardio is the key to unlocking those beta receptors, we need to optimize the routine. Because people get completely paralyzed trying to figure out if there should be jogging, sprinting, lifting weights, or doing yoga.
The clearest answer comes from a recent systematic review that analyzed 84 different randomized control trials. They compared every modality to see what forces the body to release visceral fat the fastest. And the undeniable winners were vigorous intensity aerobic exercise and high-intensity interval training, commonly known as HIIT.
I know a lot of people are going to ask about resistance training here, because lifting weights is incredibly popular right now for longevity.
And it should be. Lifting weights is a non-negotiable requirement for a long, healthy life. Muscle mass acts as a sink for blood glucose, it protects your joints, and it prevents frailty as we age. But we have to look at the specific problem we are trying to solve today. When the goal is the rapid reduction of visceral fat over a period of a few months, the data clearly shows resistance training alone does not create the specific aerobic demand and the adrenaline spike required to drain that internal fat tank as effectively as cardio does.
Because the biological rule is that fat burns in the flame of oxygen. You need a sustained high demand for oxygen to oxidize those lipid molecules. So if we're choosing between steady, vigorous running and a structured HIH protocol on a bike, does the data crown a champion?
At that level, we are truly splitting hairs. The direct comparisons show both modalities are highly effective. There is some minor granular data suggesting that for individuals under the age of 24, HI8 running might offer a fraction of a percent better results than HI cycling, likely due to the full-body mechanical load.
But debating whether a 23-year-old should run or bike to squeeze out an extra 0.5% of efficiency, that completely misses the forest for the trees. The psychological reality of exercise adherence is the most important data point of all. Consistency will absolutely dominate a perfect plan every single time.
Yes, a meticulously crafted textbook HIIT protocol that makes you feel nauseous, that you absolutely dread, and therefore only manage to do twice a month. That routine will always lose out to a brisk uphill hike with a friend or a fast-paced dance class that you genuinely look forward to doing 3 times a week.
So stripping away the complex schedules and the hyper-optimization, what is the baseline target the medical literature suggests we aim for?
The clinical sweet spot for rapid visceral fat reduction is a session lasting about 45 minutes, performed 2 to 3 times a week. The crucial variable is just ensuring you hit that moderate to vigorous intensity zone to actually trigger the adrenaline release.
Which means we need a reliable way to measure that intensity without requiring everyone to buy a $400 smartwatch to track their exact heart rate.
The most scientifically validated low-tech tool we have for that is the talk test.
The talk test.
Yeah. It relies on your body's ventilatory threshold. You know you have entered the moderate intensity zone when your oxygen demand reaches a point where you can still speak in full sentences, but you are noticeably winded. You wouldn't be comfortable reading a book out loud.
Okay, and crossing over into vigorous intensity.
That happens when you can only string together 3 or 4 words before you are forced to pause and gasp for a breath. If you are jogging with a friend and you can comfortably gossip about your entire weekend without breaking your cadence, your adrenaline isn't spiking enough. You need to pick up the pace until conversation becomes difficult.
There is a finding published recently in the British Journal of Sports Medicine that I think offers the most encouraging perspective on all this. They studied the specific relationship between the amount of exercise and the amount of fat lost, and they found that the effects on visceral fat are strictly dose-dependent.
That is a profound biological feature. It means your body has an almost limitless capacity to reward you for the physical work you put in.
It's not diminishing returns right away.
No, not at all. If you exercise more frequently, or if you push the intensity slightly higher over time, the body responds with proportionally greater reductions in that toxic fat. There is a direct linear relationship.
But this is where we have to unlearn decades of toxic diet culture. That beautiful dose-dependent reward system absolutely does not apply to restricting your food.
Not at all. Dieting hits a very abrupt, very stubborn metabolic brick wall. If a slight caloric deficit helps you lose a little weight, it seems logical that starving yourself will help you lose it much faster.
Right, that's what everyone assumes.
But human biology actively fights back against starvation. If you restrict your calories too severely, your body assumes it is entering a catastrophic famine. It plummets your baseline metabolic rate, it cannibalizes your muscle tissue, and it stubbornly hoards every single ounce of visceral fat it can to keep your organs alive. Extreme calorie cutting completely shuts down the fat-burning process.
It is the exact inverse of what millions of people attempt every January. You actually need to consume enough high-quality food to fuel your nervous system and your muscles, maintaining just a small, sustainable deficit. And then you step up the physical movement to signal the body that it is safe to burn the emergency fuel. Feed the machine, then move the machine.
That is the exact sequence. The metabolism is not a calculator. It is an incredibly complex, highly reactive survival system.
Let's synthesize all of this into the ultimate actionable formula based on the clinical literature. Step 1. You manipulate the cellular environment by loading your plate with intensely colorful, carotenoid-rich vegetables. You're flipping the genetic switches toward fat oxidation. Step 2. You swap your standard beverages for minimally processed green teas, like matcha or sencha, utilizing those catechins to chemically block a portion of fat absorption.
Spot on.
Step 3. You introduce the physiological trigger by embracing a moderate to vigorous cardio routine that you genuinely enjoy for 45 minutes a few times a week.
Exactly.
And step 4, perhaps the most liberating step of all.
Yep.
You take your bathroom scale and permanently remove it from your life, trusting the internal data over external gravity.
It is a phenomenal, scientifically rigorous protocol. And taking a step back to look at the broader implications, the literature really forces us to confront a profound contradiction in how we live.
How so?
Well, if our biology possesses this incredible, almost limitless capacity to burn off the most toxic substances in our bodies simply in response to movement, but it completely shuts down and rebels the moment we try to starve it, what does that reveal about our society's endless obsession with extreme, punishing diets? Right. We spend our entire lives trying to shrink ourselves by doing less and eating less, completely ignoring that our bodies were beautifully, intricately engineered to heal themselves through movement.
That is the perfect provocative thought to leave hanging in the air for everyone listening. Stop starving the system and start moving the machine. Pop the toxic bubble wrap from the inside out.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this conversation. We appreciate your time, and we will catch you on the next one.